All right, this is the second video regarding the third declension. And this video is going to sort of hit on how to recognize what is a third declension vocabulary word. How can we tell? And it'll cover how to determine the stem as well as the gender of these words, since we know that there are pars and flumen declensions of the third declension, and that each of those is both masculine or feminine. So they take both masculine and feminine words. They are not set. Rules govern whether a word is masculine or feminine, okay? So I've noted up here, we're in the purple book. The PB is for purple book on page 35. And this is just kind of the little introduction they kind of lay out for you. And you'll see these words, they give the nominative and the genitive of the vocabulary. So lex, legis, homo, hominis, veritas, veritatis, imperator, imperatoris. And so we look at these words, and typically we've had declensions where we could look down here, our first declension, all of the vocabulary words end the nominative and the genitive in a, I. We have in the second declension that the nominative and genitive words in vocab end in us, e. We also have second declension, e. Okay, and that was the neuter. And then we have the third declension. It just simply tells us that these are masculine and feminine words, but why don't we have endings here, right? So I don't have them filled in yet. We're just doing a little discovery here. And so what we start to recognize is these endings, there's nothing set here, right? These are all various endings. When we get over to the genitive of each vocabulary word, we start to recognize a little pattern here, and that is that we have an is ending, is, in each of these. And so that's our is ending. And so we are able to determine with our vocabulary to what declension our vocabulary belongs by looking at the second word given. It'll always give us like a lex, legis, homo, hominis, veritas, veritatis, and we will always look. And as soon as we see this is repeating ending here, once we see is, we know it's a third declension word. Okay, so that's how we can tell. And then the other thing, in order to determine the stem of a word, and we've covered this in the other declensions because it's the same rule, we always look at the nominative. They always give us a nominative and genitive singular. So we see lex, legis, and I look at this one and I drop the ending of is, and that is how I find my stem. There's your stem. This means law. Okay, and then we tack on the other endings in order to determine its job or case in a sentence. Okay. Okay, in addition to that, we're going to look more at the gender now, because we know if we saw the first video about the third declension, we know that the third declension is sort of broken into three different categories. We have lex words, we have pars words, and we have flumen words. And flumen is our neuter, and so I'm not going to talk anything about that in these videos at this point. So when we are discussing the third declension, we have to determine the gender of these words. These words simply have a meaning, but we don't know what their gender are because the gender is not given. They're either masculine or feminine or neuter, and we have to determine that. And so then there's a set of rules that you must follow, and these are given in the blue grammar book. Okay, it always has the rules. And so these rules are in the blue book, like I said, and they are numbers 46 through 51. And these will help us determine how we're going to label these in terms of gender. Okay, so let's see here. We're going to look at these. These generally just need to be memorized with time and just sort of using them. I've got a handy bookmark that we'll look at as well that has an awesome flow chart with these rules. So it's a great visual for the kids, and it's just an easy tool to help them. And once you label what the genders are of these, you don't have to do it again. You add them to your flashcards, and it just becomes part of what we memorize. like with the other declensions. So it's not a big deal. So we're going to look at these and we follow them in order. We always start at number 46 when we're determining gender, and we say nouns naming individual male persons are masculine. And they give you an example, miles, militis, which is a soldier, and soldiers back in the day were always masculine. And so it's a given here, masculine. Same thing applies down here. Nouns naming individual female persons are feminine. And so we have things like mater, matris, which means mother. And I should have written that here. This means mother. And so that's a feminine person. And so it's a feminine word. Then we get down to 48. It just simply reminds you on 48 that you must apply 46 before you apply 47. So you just always have to go in this order. Okay, so we dropped to 49 here. Nominative singular nouns, just meaning nominative singular, nominative singular, nominative singular. So it's always the first word given in a vocabulary. I just wanted to make that clear, so I added that. Nominative singular nouns ending in ER or an OR ending, and they call it the error rule. So if it ends in an ER or an OR, then it's masculine. Okay, do we have any ER or OR words up here? We do. Okay. All right, so we can tell here, does it name, so we have to go back to our rules and say, does it name a specific male individual person first? Well, imperator, imperatoris means commander, and commanders back then were always masculine. And they will give you this in the grammar. In your purple book, they will tell you if it's a rule breaker, okay? Or if it's just simply gonna follow this first one, okay? They'll give you some hints to that. So in this case, we have an OR ending here, and that OR says it'll be masculine, okay? But it also names an individual male person because commanders were male, and so that's the rule that gives it its gender, was number 46, okay? All right, so we come back to this next one, rule 50. Nominative singular, just meaning the first word given in your vocabulary. Those nouns ending in an S, an O, or an X will be feminine, okay? So, trying to think of a particular word, and I'll look at that in just a minute. But if we come up here, we can't apply that rule to this word hominis, because we have to look at what it means, man. And we have to know that if they name an individual male person, it'll be masculine. So we already know automatically that that satisfies rule 46. And this is why you have to apply things in order. Because if you just jumped down here and went, oh, look, it ends in an O, which means it fits this rule. It ends in an O. It makes it feminine. Well, we know that can't be right. Okay, so it's very important to follow the order of the rules when you're determining gender. And then finally, rule 51 simply says, again, nominative singular nouns ending in an L, an A, an N, a C, an E, or a T are neuter. Okay, and so they call this the Lancet rule. And the one above it, as I mentioned, is the Socks rule for feminine. Okay, so they have these just kind of fun, simple ways to help us remember error, okay, is for masculine words if they end in an ER or the OR. And we have the Socks rule to determine if it ends in an S, an O, or an X, and that makes it feminine. And then we have the Lancet rule, where if it ends in any one of those letters, it'll be a neuter word, which will follow flumen, which we're not even going to talk about at this point, okay? And so those are just kind of some of those rules there that I wanted to show you. And then I also wanted to show you that there's this fun little flow chart here that I have. And this one, so let me just think, let me look really quickly. Let's say I have the word gains, okay? Let me put it up. Let me put it up on the board. Gains. Give me a second to swap hands. This is gains gentis. Okay, this is the word that we're going to look to figure out what's the gender of this. And so we are going to be looking at the nominative singular to determine gender. When I look at that word, gains gentis means tribe. Okay, in the book it says tribe. Well, tribe, let's see, using our fun little bookmark here. Okay, I'm going to look at that and it says, does it name an individual male or female person? Tribe? It does not name an individual male or female person. So we go to no, and it leads us to the next question. Apply the error test. Does it end in an ER or an OR? No. Okay, so we're going to drop down this no and follow the arrow. Apply the sock test. Does it end in an S, an O, or an X? Does it end in an S, an O, or an X? Yes, it does. Okay, once you see that yes, it does, it tells you the noun is feminine. And so when I go into my book over here, for example, my purple book right here, I'm going to write next to Gaines Gentis, it's feminine with my F there. And that just helps me keep that straight, and it helps my son when he's filling out his vocabulary. Now, he's not going to use my book, he'll use his, and he doesn't have all these labeled. But we will take this fabulous little tool here with our flow chart, or you can just memorize them in this order, okay? And you apply that in order to determine the gender of each of your vocabulary words. So I'd recommend that you go through. Now you'll see on some of those pages, it'll simply say the declension of pars and then give vocabulary that you know are all pars. It'll say the declension of lex when it introduces that and gives only lex words. So it's further on in the book where it starts to mix them both, and you'll have to figure it out, for example, on page 47, which you really won't even get to until next week's lesson. So I don't believe you'll hit ones you'll have to label just yet, but that's just a quick down and dirty, how to find the stem, how to determine the gender using the rules that are given, and a fun little bookmark flowchart to help you do it. Happy translating.